Today, it's Edwin's Monday evening property rant. Hello again, it's Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics. Well, that is post covering finance and property news. Now, another Monday evening, of course, and Edwin is back for another rant. Edwin, hello. The craziness continues. Who's getting brave? Who's getting more creative?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of creativity out there, Martin, and shout out to the followers that I got a hug from a couple of followers from our podcast. So I feel a lot chirpier, a lot warmer, since we got a cold snap. It's not just because I'm wearing a warm pullover here. It's great. Thanks a lot. And there's a lot more people need those hugs, Martin, because there's a lot of shenanigans going around. There's a lot of smoke and mirrors, and landlords are getting creative, braver, and so are the politicians. I mean, it's anything goes.
Yeah, I mean, we are in crazy, crazy times. And I thought maybe a good place to start, Edwin, was just to quickly touch on the Grenfell Towers report that came out this last week. This is a UK report, and it relates to the high-rise tower in London where 72 people lost their lives some years ago because of the combustible cladding. But the report came out. And what was really interesting about this report, Edwin, was that it basically pointed the finger at, I'm going to give you the list because this might resonate with some of our recent conversations. Firstly, the regulations had been privatized and generalized, so the building regulations were not as clear-cut as previously. Secondly, the cladding had been tested and found to be flammable, but those reports were suppressed. Thirdly, the owners' association, the people in charge of the tower, were also blamed. The local authorities were blamed. The regulators were blamed because of the fact that the certification processes had been privatized rather than actually being done separately. And pretty much everybody, from soup to nuts, from the government to private sector industry bodies, all were blamed for the unnecessary death of 72 people. Now, I just want to highlight here, Edwin, that the things we've been talking about in the Australian context, so things like poor construction because of the privatization of certification, because of the fact that the government regulatory processes aren't working, because of the fact that materials are not being tested appropriately. It's the same old, same old. And for me, this is an absolute wake-up call. And for those watching across Australia, we have very similar issues across Australia with regard to our quality of our construction. And despite the fact of all the things that people have been talking about recently about everything's fixed. No, it's not. I'm afraid you could almost do a global search and replace and come up with the same issues that the Grenfell Tower report actually came up with.
Yeah, this is the sad thing, Martin. Since '89, the deregulation of the whole industry, we've been in shambles. Now, since then, we've had two reviews of the deregulation that occurred then, and we've had two reviews, and in both reviews, some really big name, prominent firms and people representing different industries basically said it's not working. It is not working. So we wasted all this money in reviews to bring up the same things that were brought up in the first review, and saying, look, we're still not there. We've gone backwards. We haven't gone forwards. And this is what I keep on saying with regards to building and pest reports that are put together by that company before you bid, and by the people that just they haven't had a history in renovating construction or the building industry whatsoever. They come from from the IT sector, and because it's the building reports a program for and geared for people that have got that sort of ability, to maneuver through laptops, take photos. I mean, the stuff that goes on out there is absolutely mind-boggling. But you and I have been talking about for many years, and we're going to be talking about it for many years to come, unfortunately. Now, remind me, Martin, but aren't there something like 57 towers in Sydney, or in New South Wales, extended to to Newcastle and Wollongong? There's about 57 that have got flammable cladding, but we don't know where they are. We don't know what towers they are, let alone all the other towers that have got defaults. Faults that basically you shouldn't be nobody should be living in these towers. But going back to the flammable cladding, there's either, from memory, there's either 37 or 57, or somewhere in between, that we're not aware of. The authorities won't disclose where they are, and I'm sure the owners' corporation haven't disclosed to the committees haven't disclosed to the owners' corporation either. To the rest of the unit holders in those towers. Now, and this is fundamentally, in my opinion, it's criminal, because you're allowing people to buy, resell, and buy into something that that's a catastrophe waiting to happen. So your brakes are shot in your Aston Martin that you're driving around there in England, I've been told. So your brakes are shot. Your one of your pistons is about to blow a rod, and you tell me, come over and visit you to do our live podcast, and you say, hey, how would you like to take it for a spin? And I say, yeah, and then you go, oh yeah, but look, I'm charging 150 pounds for a drive around the block. So I go, yeah, look, let's give it a whirl. So I'll give you the 150 pounds. I buy into that, and whooshka, I lose it around the bend, and I go off the rails and off into the never. So I mean, that's effectively what people are doing, right? You're playing Russian roulette. But in a more serious nature, you're really putting your life and limb at stake, moving into these, and this is what I'm talking about: the criminality of the strata companies, the owners' corporations, the committees that won't disclose this information, and the government that are keeping it all hush hush. I mean, this is the world that we're living in, and it was supposed to be transparent, and those in charge are supposed to be more transparent than the previous governments and the previous governments before them, and so forth. I mean, this is why I think a lot of this, the unfortunate thing, Martin, is what I say, is that there's so much wrong with the real estate industry, the construction sector, the whole industry.
Yeah, Edwin, so this is very, very significant events, I think, relating to Grenfell Tower. And I would make the point that, in fact, the criminal prosecutions which will follow a, guess what, police investigation. So we're talking 5, 6, 7 years before anything happens. And there are well over 400 other towers across the country that have already been identified as actually being defective. And yet almost nothing is being done to fix them in the UK. And in Australia, as you say, they don't even disclose which of the high-rise developments are actually exposed, particularly to this flammable cladding. And the interesting thing about the report, they were talking about the fact that the flammable cladding was actually put on old buildings to sort of dress them up and make them look a little bit more modern. But they knew, the point is that the tests on the flammable cladding that were done by the firms who sold the materials, they knew that it was actually flammable, and yet they disclosed that to no one. And so the criminality goes from the beginning of the process through the construction process. So the manufacturing, the construction, the certification, the installation, and now even through the rectification processes. So this is a soup to nuts problem. And unfortunately, I believe that this is just the tip of the iceberg. So as you say, when you actually get an inspection done on a property, for example, if it's in a unit, how much can you actually find out? Can you actually examine the external cladding and work out whether it's flammable or not? That's tough to do, isn't it?
Look, there are many things that people that are looking at buying into high-rise developments, they need to do, which they don't do. For starters, they get conned out of getting a building and pest report. Admittedly, pest, you sort of pick and choose which buildings, but in a way, you still want to do a pest report in some of these high-rise and some of these older buildings as well. The garbage room areas are just littered with cockroaches and all sorts of insects as well, and vermin that are lingering around. So it pays to do a proper inspection that's been paid by yourself, as opposed to relying on the agent. The agent will just tell you, just rely on the strata report. But the problem is, again, is before you bid and before you buy, in terms of they provide strata reports, but they only provide, in the majority, they only provide the financials for the last few years. It's prudent that your lawyer. It's prudent that your lawyer yourself, whoever you've appointed to assist you with the purchase of the unit in the unit complex, to request for copies of the old older minutes. Then what the before you bid reports give you, or the strata reports give you. Strata managers usually jump up and down because the poor little princesses, both of both persuasions, male and female, they're going to get the nails, and they're going to get paper cuts when they put the files through the high speed copy machine to give you a full report. But the thing is, it's not for free either. The bastards charge you about anywhere from 30 cents to 50 cents per copy. Anybody would think they were bloody lawyers. Nothing against lawyers. But you're just like a wounded bull. So it's not for free, but it's your right. It is your right for this to obtain this information. So you've got to be careful how you do this research and how you do these inspections in medium to high density developments, because it's not just about what's happening inside your unit, inside your walls. It's also what's going to happen on the outside, Martin. And, so you've got to really avail of yourself. In actual fact, you could be spending a lot more money on a building report and strata reports and every other report that you require. When you're buying a unit, you're more than likely to spend a lot more money than what you would in a freestanding home, because it really requires a lot more due diligence if you don't really know what you're looking for, and you don't know what sort of questions to ask, because a lot of the selling agents, they themselves don't know, and they just refer to the strata report, and I think that's it. And this is why I kept on banging on. You look at what Mascot Towers was a classic. If you were buying into Mascot Towers and you were and we were leading the charge and helping you to buy in Mascot Towers, well, we would have obtained the documents from the inception, and we would have worked out straight away the backhanded deal that the strata company did with the developer at the time within 18 months of the building, and that's when they did a sweet table deal of 800K to indemnify the builder / developer, and he walked. But this is what I kept on saying back then when the issues arose with Mascot Towers. I said, you need to go back to the beginning of the strata reports and see what happened, and you would have seen. And then it was it wasn't until months later that that was disclosed when reporters started doing a little bit more research and in-depth research into what was really happening. But that's the whole thing, and this is where this is where people get caught out, unfortunately, and a lot more people are going to get caught out. And this is what I'm saying is that the landlords, owners, property managers, strata managers are getting becoming smart asses or smarter in one way, more creative and brave in the shit that they're doing. I mean, and that follows on with that tweet that I'd put up there, where response one of my followers there on X. Yeah, it says, in response to a previous tweet that I put up, and A30 AEW writes, I've seen this done to a few townhouses nearby. On the other hand, I had a landlord split a large living room, dining room area adjacent to open kitchen into a walled bedroom adjacent to the kitchen to make it a third bedroom villa unit while I was still living in it. So I reached out to A30, and he's going to give me a little bit more on that story, because he says he gets even worse as to what happened. So and I'll share it next week, because I've asked him a number of questions. Was he compensated whilst the builder was doing the works? Was he compensated? Did he know the builder was going to do the works before he signed the agency agreement, the management agency agreement? Did he the lease? Did he all these things? But it's getting very brazen out there, and the unfortunate thing, Martin, is I'm sure he did something about it. We'll know a little bit more next week. But because of the situation and the rental stress that you talked about earlier on, a lot of people are too scared to put the property managers, to put the strata companies, to put the landlords in their place, because they're too scared that they're going to be kicked out. In many cases, they unfortunately do.
Absolutely. Well, it is a really, really concerning story. And the point I really want to underscore, Edwin, is that if you are thinking of buying a unit, you can't just rely on that very high-level strata report. You need to do your own due diligence. And unfortunately, many people aren't and don't, and they get really badly caught out later. And one of the really interesting observations from my conversations with people who've actually gone through this process and they've ended up with a lemon is that it's extremely difficult to extract yourself, because if you've actually bought a lemon, it means it's a defective property in some way. When you go to try and shift it on, you might find another gullible prospective purchaser. But if you don't, then you've either got to pony up and pay for the significant repairs that often, of course, come in big chunks, and that's more than just your quarterly or monthly payment to the committee that runs the property, or you actually take a massive hit, or you sit in it and you hope you can let it out to somebody with all the risks that entails potentially, but the capital value doesn't go up. And one of the really interesting observations about this capital story is that whilst prices in some parts of the country are rising significantly, if you look carefully, some of these high-rise units that were thrown up over the last 20 years, prices are actually still going backwards. And so what you've got captive purchasers who bought in good intent, but they've bought a lemon and they're now struggling to know what to do with it. And that is a situation that you get stuck with, not just at a point in time, but over a long period of time, which is why it's such a critical question to do your due diligence on the way in.
Yeah, and we're going to move into a period. We've been pushed into moving into a period that the first-time buyers and the young people that want to get into the property ladder, again, goes back to have longevity of a roof over their heads and a bit more security. But unfortunately, they're getting pushed into these dog boxes that are badly built. Yep. And what's the answer to the 1.2 million homes that Albo and Co real estate agents were supposed to build? I mean it's high rise, and high rise. I keep on saying we can't build them. There's only I can count in one hand what the first tier builders that can build, and they've got history, but you pay through the nose. But it also goes back to Martin, not only the cost of going in, but also the ongoing costs of the maintenance, as you say. But then there's a lot of other underlying issues that haven't. There are other snakes and dragons that haven't been awakened yet, and that is how the imported materials are going to fare over a period of time. And with deregulation also came about a stepping backwards with with what's now called the NCC, the National Construction Code, and the standards. You're building to a standard, but we're not building to meet the demand of the amount of people living in these towers, the topography of the land. I mean, there's so many other issues outside of the NCC that the NCC doesn't capture. But unfortunately, the builders turn around and say, "Hey, but it's the standard. It's the standard. It's the standard." But as I keep on saying, I mean, the failure of these mechanical ventilation. I mean, the list just goes on, and this is what we're being corralled to move into, because there's more people getting more uppity about medium density development, which I said for many decades. That's where that was the solution from 20 years ago. Medium density, small medium density development. Chris, thank God Chris listens to our show, because he's now an advocate for small medium density development, and he's trying to push that wheelbarrow. Let's see how far he can go.
Well, two observations there. I don't know whether you saw this, but High Rise Harry was talking about we will build more eventually, suggesting that they need stronger demand, but they're going to build westward. So, further and further and further from the CBD. So that's sort of the first part of the story. And the fact of the matter is, of course, that we know that the amount of new stuff that's being approved at the moment is lower than it's been. So we're not actually even starting to build, even if it's not necessarily the types of property that you or I would advocate as being appropriate. And I just want to underscore again, a lot of the materials that are being imported are not tested on the way in. We know that some of that boarding material, for example, contains asbestos. Some of the materials coming in could be much more flammable than people expect. Even the quality of some of the wiring that's being imported is still in question. So there is a bunch of questions there in terms of the way that construction works. But if you're in Mossman, a different story. So Mossman is saying, we've got no room for new homes, And this came out with this amazing report saying we're too dense. So, they're quoting here Mossman particularly. You're not actually going to build in these more wealthy suburbs. So what it means is, again, corralling more and more high-rise construction into the western parts of Sydney, a long way from anywhere, as though that's somehow solving the significant housing problem that we have. And I'm afraid that it just once again highlights the real fundamental question here about where do we want to build, what do we want to build, where should we build, and what should we build, and where should we build them? And that, those sorts of questions. And at the moment, we're being fed this story of, well, we got to build high rise because that's all we got. We got to build the 1 point whatever it is million homes. They're never going to reach those targets. In fact, there was an article in the week, we might come onto it later, basically said there's no way. If you look at what actually is being approved and built relative to the targets, they're so far off as to be absolutely crazy. So this is now the linchpin of the discussion about what sort of property should we be building versus what are we actually building at the moment?
Look, this is. I mean, what's happening there in Mossman and in many parts of Sydney, in the older, affluent areas of Sydney. You've got the NIMBYs, and they're coming out strong. As I said, Chris has got a real fight on his hands. Right, but the problem there is, Martin, is that a lot of these people it hasn't smacked them in the face yet. It will soon, and that is that when they get of age, that they will need to move out of the big homes. They will have to move, but there's nothing built to cater for them. If anything, they should be building a lot more set 55s, dwellings to accommodate for retirement in the area. This is what I've been banging on for a very, very, very long time. This is the problem. So, they're going to they're bringing it upon themselves, and they're going to be, carrying a really big cross later on down the track. Many think that the solution is to build apartments in the further out west, further out, northwest, west, and in the southwest regions. But nobody really wants to live in an apartment in the northwest, west, in the southwest region, further than what we already have, because again, there's really no infrastructure, and you're corralling people into high-rise development when in those areas, people want to, if you, historically, if you wanted to go out, northwest, south, west and west, it was because you really were looking for that that half-acre block, anywhere upwards of a half-acre block. You were looking for a bit of room so that the kids can kick the footy around and can play cricket. But if you're going to start banging on high rises there, it's going to be they're going to become. We're going to be building more and more ghettos. We've already got a large number of areas, and in affluent part, very wealthy parts in terms of property values in Sydney, where you got these high-rise developments that are just absolute ghettos.
Yeah.
And this is where I brought out a video a long time ago with Jennifer Duke, and we called it the $1 million ghettos. And this is what we've got now. Now it's not just the $1 million ghettos; it's the $2.5 million ghettos, because that's what some of these apartments fetch in these areas. Back then, they were pushing the $1 million, but now they're pushing the 2.5, and getting worse by the day. But look. What are the politicians doing in order to solve the problem and to appease the masses? Is you got to become a chameleon. You got to become all things to all men. I mean, I'm not. They're not taking a leaf out of Kamala Harris, or is it Kamala or Camelot or whatever. Yeah, Kamala Harris is from America, where she changes her accent, but Elbow changes his clothes and his and who he supports. But that's. Whether it's Alba, whether it's Goma, whether it's whoever, they're all the same. They're just trying to appease to the masses. But I guess what the WeChat chatterers really hit the nail on the head, and this is now where in terms of we're upset with China. We don't want anything to do with China. We want to decouple from China. We want to get away from China. But hold on a minute, we need China. We need to kiss up to China and we got to go over there and have some fine wine and maybe some yum cha with Xi Jinping, whatever. So now Jim Chalmers is headed to China later this month, as the economies of both nations falter. So what's to come of that, Martin? I mean, I know what the WeChat chatterers are saying, but what are your thoughts on that? I mean, we love China one day, we hate them the next day. They're our worst enemy, tomorrow, and the day after, we're back in bed with them.
Well, China is a really interesting issue, and it's worth just looking, I think, in a bit more detail at some of the coverage. So we might start with, as you say, Chalmers bound amid $4.5 billion budget blowout, going to China, says going to see Beijing, going to try and see. And why? Well, here's an article which actually really gets to the heart of it. So China's problem is bigger than we think, is what they talk about. And what they're essentially saying is, Houston, we have a problem with China. But the heart of it is the iron ore price. And it's worth remembering that the iron ore price has fallen from 145 US to a significant drop now. It's it's down quite a lot. And if you look at the latest chart on the iron ore price, this is it here. You can see it's knocking around 91 and it was much higher. So we have a big issue, and that's creating a significant hole in terms of the Australian government budget. So the 4.5 billion or whatever it is, and interestingly, now people are talking about, well, maybe the iron ore price will go down even more. So, the China story. We know about the property price falls. We know about the number of people perhaps wanting to jump out from China and to move elsewhere. We talked about that, more people coming to Australia and elsewhere too. We also know that the strategy of China is to try and fire up the consumer-led revolution in China rather than just build stuff. And we also know, as we discussed last week, they've been exporting a lot of iron materials they've been produced and trying to shift those on as well. So this is a very significant issue for the Australian economy. And I want to sort of bring that back now to another point, because you actually made the comment about being punched in the face. Well, of course, you may have been thinking about this comment here from Wayne Swan, because he's accusing the RBA basically of they're punching themselves in the face basically with their strategy. Now, it is worth just understanding over this last week just how much things have actually gone quite badly awry with the Australian economy, and it is just worth parsing that in the context of what we're saying about a weak China and the fact that China is not going to be a support mechanism like it used to be for the Australian economy. Well, the most recent GDP, of course, came out very, very weak. And it shows that essentially it's all about jobs boom in Australia, thanks to high migration and the taxpayer. So the government's paying. That is the cornerstone issue here, that in fact, the only reason the economy was not in recession was because of massive government investment and the high migration. That's the only thing that led to that outcome. And the question is, of course, is that sustainable? Now, there's a battle going on between Chalmers and the government about their strategy, and of claiming, of course, that their mechanisms and support, handing out money for energy prices, as well as the government boom in jobs, is helping to bring inflation down. On the other hand, I have to say that if you listen to the RBA, who came out this week in a speech, particularly Michelle Bullock, making the point that actually some people may well have to sell up because interest rates will be higher for longer. The pressure on households is considerable. And in fact, yesterday I put a show up trying to get to just how many households are in real financial stress, because there were a couple of interesting reports. One from what Bullock said, that there are more people in difficulty. Another report looking at New South Wales, that things were actually very significant. And interestingly, in Queensland, another report came out and said that perhaps 2/3 of people are struggling to pay bills. So this is a really, really big and significant issue. And that leads then to the discussion about, well, the RBA lives or dies by its forecasting. Perhaps the RBA is struggling with what's going on and how to measure how bad it is for households. And then that's, I think, an important point, that it is actually quite difficult to know precisely how many people are being caught up in this financial pressure, this mess. Of course, everybody wants to claim it's not a big issue, but the truth is, and my surveys show this, and in fact on Tuesday in my live show, I'm going to go into this in more detail if people want to join that live show on Tuesday, to look at in more detail how it's playing out for people. Because the bottom line is that a lot of people are now finding it really difficult to make ends meet and to struggle. And okay, we know that rents are still rising, and that's a feed into inflation. We know that the cost of construction of new property is feeding into inflation still. We know that the services sector, the wages growth there, and the cost of insurance and the cost of financial services are continuing to be very strong. And of course, we also know that things like insolvencies are still on the rise, and that's another factor that's in the mix when you actually start standing back and thinking about it. And in fact, as Christopher Joy said, he was suggesting that the insolvencies are now at a 25-year high, and that's going to be very much exacerbated by the fact that the ATO is now actively pursuing businesses for tax that they owe. So the ATO is one of the other causes of why we've got these massive insolvency. So my point is, standing back and looking at all of this, you've got to say that things are not looking great when it comes to the Australian economy. And yet, of course, we've still got this strong momentum in the housing sector. And you will have noticed this week we had quite a few reports of areas where, boy, you can buy with a 50K deposit, like this one, for example. And this actually all refers to a particular report that came out from CanStar and Hotspots. And they were looking at places where you could buy. So this is actually looking at places like Liverpool, Wiley Park, Harris Park in New South Wales. And you know, and I know that there are some interesting observations about the types of property that are being built over there and why those prices would be perhaps where they are. But they actually went around the country. So look at Melbourne, for example, places like Epping and Melton South, claiming that things are going to actually, look pretty good. And they talk about building wealth for the future. Or if you look here, this is actually South Australia, same story. Or indeed, even down in Hobart and in Tasmania. So all of those areas have some very interesting characteristics. But my question to you, Edwin, is from what we know about the broader economy, from what we know about the fact that interest rates are going to stay high for longer, is it that sensible for some of these people to pile into those, quote, cheaper suburbs at the moment?
Well, look, okay, let's go answer that question first before we get into what the WeChat chatter is the same. But look, when you talk about these reports, right, they're not really telling you. I mean, have you? My question to these reporters, they're just again sitting there in their offices in George Street, on the 20th floor or wherever they sit, right? And they punch this out. Have you been through Wiley Park, right? $50,000 to get into Wiley Park. You'd be lucky to get a bloody 2-bedroom apartment, and in a complex that you'd want what is it, First Amendment or Second Amendment rights like they're doing over in America. Because shit, man, even I'd be scared to walk down some of those streets, and I kid you not. If you want to buy into Liverpool, you buy into a 2-bedroom apartment in Speed Street. And let me tell you, Speed Street, I think they gave it that name for the use of illegal substances, in my opinion, at the bottom end of the railway line, where again you got to be packing in order to walk there at night. I mean, things change over time, right? But you just got to be careful. I mean, they're good, eye-catching headlines, right? With get into this suburb with 50,000. I mean, look, whether it be Wiley Park, whether it be Liverpool, whether it be so you wouldn't buy a freestanding home, as I've been saying, particularly around Liverpool and in Wiley Park for that matter. Freestanding homes, they're not cheap at all. There are not many suburbs around Sydney now, in the Sydney region, that you could buy a freestanding home for less than $1 million, and most of them are in the in some parts of Campbelltown, perhaps your Ravies or your some of those areas where you still got a high level of what we would consider to be housing commission areas. You got a lot of you got some of the Mount Druitt areas where a lot of it's been privatised, and the housing commission got sold off years and years ago. But some of these that are coming on the market, that are sitting near the apartment blocks that are there, that are still some with families that have taken on government assistance, your housing commission type of units and medium density townhouses there. Again, very run down, but you're still buying houses there on the main drags around Bidwell. You're still buying for $850,000. So you're not getting much change. So you got to be careful as to as to what you wish for, what you look for. And this goes back to our earlier conversation, Martin, where these, the NIMBYs and from the NIMBYs all the way up the ladder of state governments and federal governments, where they want developers and people to build, like the high-rise Harrys, to build the high-rise developments. It's really fundamentally in the different states of Australia and territories of Australia where people really don't want to go out and live, right? And in a way, you've got to ask yourself the question: why should they? Why would you? Unless you really want to go out there and spread out. You really don't want to go out there and live in a bloody shoebox when the temperature hits 42 degrees Celsius. I mean, you're cooking. The place of solace and comfort is your local Westfield shopping centre, where it becomes packed with people over summer. Exactly, because of the air conditioning, and then you end up with all sorts of problems, respiratory problems, because of the bad air conditioning system, the cleaning of the air conditioning. So yeah, we're in a mess. Fundamentally, we're in a real mess. And yes, you and I can say that Chalmers is going over to China to kiss up to Xi Jinping, because to do with iron ore, to do with the issues around A2 milk, and creating and keeping the jobs, the bigger industries that we would otherwise, the fishing industry, and in a way, also, I'd say they want to spruik, the tourism, pump the tourism back up again. And then we'll end up with ghost migrants, and the circle of the property life keeps on rolling. So yeah, you and I know that, but the WeChat chatters have got a couple of different opinions as well, which they'd be hot to try. Right now, hear me out. This is just the WeChat chatters. This isn't me. This is Dusty and the WeChat chat gang, right? So these are the hypotheticals that they're putting out there, and it's food for thought, Martin. Right. So the first one is: could they be negotiating, or is there an opening to negotiate a reciprocal arrangement? That, remember, we've got an arrangement with that anybody with an Australian passport can literally get on a plane, Air China or Air Malaysia, and fly over to Beijing, Guangzhou, or wherever you fancy, and go over there, and you can spend 15 days, off the bat. And we know what the WeChat chatters are doing with that opportunity, bringing money, moving as a will. We've shared that on the podcast before, and using that to basically bring Chinese money back over to Australia. For what? To purchase property, to park it here, because they don't trust the government over there, right? Like I said, it's the circle of the property life, right? So is there a possibility? Now, 90% of the WeChat chatters are saying, no, it'll never happen. But there's still that opening, right? There's still that. How desperate are our politicians? How desperate is the principal, of Albo and Co real estate partners to save predominantly, right, the Melbourne market that is on a downward trajectory in general terms, right? How desperate are they, right? I'm telling you, they're very desperate. So I'm sort of leaning a little bit towards that 1 in 10 that are sort of thinking, there's a little gap there, in between the frame and the door. There's a little gap that could be a possibility. So you've got to listen to that. You've got to listen to that. So again, but what does it really mean overall? In that arrangement, they're going to say, okay, we'll take on your iron ore, we'll take on your all this other stuff. because obviously we're dependent on it. And don't forget, the bigger story that you alluded to earlier on is the ALP. We know the Greens are forever hounding Bullock. They're saying, your thoughts are bollocks. We want to push. We want you to bring the rates down. That's the pressure that they're putting on in order to bring interest rates down, because their theory is if interest rates come down, then developers will come in and buy, basically kickstart the construction again, and they'll start fixing the problem that they've created. That's the theory. So basically what we've got is in the chatter is they're saying, well, that's potentially a door opening, because and it could. Most are saying it'll never happen, but hey, there's a little opening there. So let's just leave it there, right? But the second one to me was even more interesting. The argument that they were discussing in the in the groups, and this is really fascinating. Could we have the possibility? Remember that the CCP are really squashing down squeezing the juice out of the residential property sponge in China. It's Xi Jinping's philosophy that basically he wants everybody to be equal and to builders to build. I mean, it's Mao 2.0, right? That's his philosophy. That's his philosophical background. That's what he's after, right? But on the other hand, they also want, the CCP want, because you can only invest in real estate companies or residential real estate there in China, or shares which are predominantly made up of real estate companies that build residential property, right? But they want to channel that and squeeze that sponge and shift that money over to industry, more productive, to create jobs. Because let's face it, the unemployment is hitting close to 55-57% for new graduates there in China, and that's a huge mess. So keeping that thought in mind, Martin, this is what the second point that they're saying. Could it possibly be that we end up with some sort of building companies? We sort of got them already here, but a refocus of the Australian government pulling back building companies into Australia to build at a much cheaper rate the $1.2 million dwellings that they so need. I mean, this is the chatter that's going on. I mean, and I was fascinated by it all, by Dusty's report. I'm not saying it's going to happen. That's just the chatter, right? But fundamentally, we know that the ALP and the Greens want to bring rates down. But overall, you and I have talked about it for a while, and I've been banging on for a long time, is that until we get this construction thing sorted, and until we start building, and until we start bringing in the medium density to start creating new dwellings in areas where people want to live in, not bust them out to out west, out whoop whoop. Until then, the Sydney region, the Sydney market, it may stall for a bit, but it's still, in my opinion, it's still going to keep on rising in many markets of the Sydney region.
Well, that's right. It's a simple supply-demand, of course, and we're seeing some interesting trajectories that are quite different. But you mentioned Melbourne, of course. Melbourne is continuing to fall. But just, it's fascinating if you look at the latest report from the master builders. Master builders have actually cut 53,000 homes from the pipeline forecast, warning of long-standing problems such as slow planning and approval processes, rising material costs and labour shortages, etc., and of course exacerbated by, quote, persistently high interest rates that have stopped people from buying homes. So, that's part of the story too. And that's why there's this big pressure on the RBA to pull interest rates down. But of course, what Michelle Bullock said this last week was, well, remember that, of course, inflation is effectively hitting everybody. So, high inflation is not good. So unless inflation comes back down, we actually haven't got the journey to an end point. And, it's worth just reflecting. She's not expecting inflation to come back down into band until, a year plus out from here. So the prospects of interest rate cut this year is close to zero, I'd suggest, despite what the Fed might do in September. But there is a really interesting question. If there is actually some sort of deal between China and Australia to bring more foreign building power to bear on the Australian market, you could see that playing out. And just to give you another little way about thinking about this was a chart that you posted, wasn't it, from showing that the new dwelling starts are much, much lower in reality than was what was forecast.
That's right. So this is what, like, you start to think and ponder as to what are they going to be really talking about? What is going to happen post this meeting with China? But in reality, we're just not building enough. I mean, this is the insider, our Bob the Builder, his inside knowledge with HIA and the reports that he gets and what he has and what he's seeing. I mean, that's reality. Reality is we're way short in terms of construction startups, construction finishes. We're supposed to be hitting 230 per annum, and this year we're going to be hitting this calendar year we're only going to be hitting about 95 or 97,000. I mean, it's farcical when you think about it. Finishing off with the WeChat chatterers, Martin. Another way, remember what we discussed a few months back, that the WeChat chatters were saying another way that China is going to assist our government to bring inflation down, was to bring in open the doors for cheaper products, which is obviously with materials and everything else again, and we're getting of late I've been seeing these bloody things, BYD. As one of our followers calls them, it's meant to be build your dreams, but he calls it burn your dreams, which I think it's appropriate, because there's so many videos that I've watched of BYD just igniting on simple impact over in China that are censored, and a lot of people here don't get to see it. But anyway, we're going to become a dumping ground, because there's a lot of Canada. It just pulled the pin on, not just, but have pulled the pin on the importation of electric vehicles from China. So we're just going to become a dumping ground for EVs from pretty much from all over the world. So my first tip for this segment is, keep your powder dry, because EVs could drop by 20, 30% in the near future. But for God's sake, don't get a BYD. not recommended, not by Dusty anyway.
Wow.
Going back to, so is it going to be building materials? Is it going to be materials of other sorts what the reciprocal arrangements, but there will be one. There will be one, and it will impact on our property markets, Martin.
Spot on. And I just want to underscore again, cheap materials, you've got to ask the question, are they up to snuff? Are they up to standard? Or will they let us down later? And unfortunately, of course, if those materials are then embedded into construction projects and hidden away, you may not know about it until it's too late. Now, let's just move the conversation forward, because I found this quite an amusing post from you, Edwin. This is do you believe adding a fifth bedroom or an original garage adds more value to the property? Tell us about this.
Yeah, look, I'll put it up there on. I'm just watching the listings online and what I posted up for in different areas where we're looking at properties for clients. This is one in the West region, and it's in Blacktown. It's in the Blacktown LGA. So they're advertising it as a five bedroom house. They're still putting on the ad that he has two car spaces, but obviously they used up the garage as the fifth. They converted the garage into the fifth bedroom, and the two car spaces that shows on the portals are parking spots on the driveway, and that's to beef up the value of the property. So I put it up. Yeah, just for the. I mean, there's a lot of comments there on on my Twitter feed, or there on followers want to read up. There's some funny comments, but in general terms, Martin, this is something that we share a lot with our clients in helping them and assisting them to get a bigger bang for their buck when they're looking at buying, and also for our clients that we're assisting in the sales process by way of helping them to do a quick makeover on the property in order to sell. How can we make the property more appealing from a sale point of view, and two, how can we make a seemingly smaller property or less bedrooms? How can that be converted and rejig things around in order to add another room, within the roof space without spending too much money. So, in general terms, Martin, in this area, in the Blacktown LJ, in my opinion, an attached garage to the house with internal access, the average value for that garage, the rule of thumb would be around $120,000 on average, right? This has been converted into, so you've lost $120,000 because the house no longer has a lock-up garage. In some parts of the Blacktown LJ, it'd be worth a lot more. This is just the average, because there you've got to think of security, especially if you've got fancy vehicles, tools, all valuables, all those man toys that people have, or other women's toys that may be floating around that end up in the garage. Valuable stuff that generally lives in the garage. So but overall, the average value that we put as a rule of thumb is about $120,000. The rule of thumb for the bedroom the value would be $250,000. Now, so in this case, what they're trying to appeal is to obtain a higher price because it's no longer a 4-bedroom house. It's now noted on Domain and Real Estate as a 5-bedroom house, but you've taken away, you've got no garage, so you've got no security. So who are you appealing to, right? So the bigger family, the dual, the multi-generational family. You're appealing to basically young children. When I say young, children that are able to leave home but can't afford to leave home because of the rental crisis. All these things. So it depends who it is. But I just put it out there, and maybe our followers and our viewers can make a comment as well. What do they believe? What do they think is worth more? Having a 5-bedroom house, but you take away the garage, or is it more valuable as a driving garage with a it's big enough to have a workspace at the back, but you've also got internal access, so you're not dragging your shopping or little kids coming out of the car whilst there's a thunderstorm going and blowing a gale, and you get wet in the process. But from my view, Martin, is looking at the floor plan, looking at the photos online. You could jig things around internally and move walls. A lot of those walls aren't load-bearing walls. Anyway, you can shift things around. And I reckon I could still end up with a 5-bedroom house by eliminating a lot of dead space in that, in the floor plan. Could still end up with a 5-bedroom house and keep the garage. That would be the ideal. So if we had a client that was looking at this property to buy, that's what I would say. Obviously, not pay the money that they want to pay, because I'd be arguing against the loss of the garage and so forth. But it's an interesting story, and I'm seeing more and more of these sort of things. all across Sydney.
Yeah, I'm getting similar vibes too. I will make one comment about bedroom 5 there. It doesn't look as though there are any external windows. So it could be a bit
Yeah,
dark.
yeah. No, they've the floor plan doesn't show it,
Hmm.
but on the photos, I believe there's a window there that looks out into that covered area in the where the porch is.
Right.
There is a window there from the photos. It appears that way, but you'd want to have a window. Seriously, I mean,
Absolutely.
otherwise, yeah. But look, they're obviously trying to sell it, trying to get the biggest bang for their buck in the sale. Uh, I would be looking at this and I'll be looking to see, do they have the adequate ventilation? Does it have smoke alarms? What type of smoke alarms it has? Is the garage area prone to flooding? How is the water being pushed away from the house in the rain? In other words, where are the downpipes? Where are they just, are they feeding into the stormwater, or are they just loose? And so there's all these sorts of questions that you really need to, uh, to answer in order to move forward to the next stage.
Spot on. Yeah, that was one interesting to see. So, folks, if you've got a particular view, do you value a garage more or an extra bedroom more? It'd be interesting to get your comments. Now, just before we get on to the latest stats, this slide is just worth exploring for a second. So, we talked a bit about the Greens and the fact that they're pushing for the RBA to cut rates. But here's an example of the Greens agreeing to cut down 20 native trees so that we can actually subdivide an investment property. I have to say, do as I do, not do as I say.
Yeah, do as I say, but not as I do. Look, it is funny. It's hilarious, and this is what we talk about. Earlier on at the beginning of the show, we said, they're getting more smarter, or they become smarties, or they're more creative and more brazen and braver to put this shit out. I mean, this is in your face. This is really giving you the finger, right? Giving the rest of the people the finger. And there are many people that I know in that would like to be able to subdivide big blocks of land, but they can't. They can't because of trees. That they can't put a second dwelling on because of trees. And all these green policies, and not just green. I mean, like I said, governments of all persuasion, all the bureaucracy, and all the issues around obtaining permissions to put extensions, to create new dwellings, to in general terms to build. But it's a rule for us, but not for them. And this is so I thought I'd share that with our followers and our viewers, and the hypocrisy of it all. And it just, what can you say, Martin? We just got to laugh.
Yeah, I'm afraid that I'm in laughing mode because, shake your head and think, well, it's unbelievable. But, I always think that politicians in particular have this knack of having one set of things that they do themselves that are completely different to what they want to impose on the rest of society. And for me, that's the fundamental problem we've got, because we've got politicians who believe that they're somehow elite and special and can do what they want, irrespective of what they impose elsewhere. And we're seeing that in spades in the UK and in Australia from politicians. So for me, I'm afraid I have very little time for most of them. There are a few good apples in the barrel, but of course they often get squeezed out simply because everybody else is zigging while they're zagging. Let's just go on to the numbers, because the numbers are actually, they tell an interesting story in a way, but on the other hand, it's what we've been seeing, I suppose. So on the 2nd of September, we had 18,518 properties listed in the Greater Sydney region. That's based on the domain numbers. And if we jump forward to the 9th, it's 19,130. So we are seeing once again a bit of a rise. And if you look at the chart, Edwin, that you do comparing this year with last year, you can see that the listings are continuing to be higher than this time last year for the Greater Sydney region. So I guess that's the sort of the start of the conversation. Anything you want to particularly highlight?
Yeah, look, I've sent you two other screenshots there, Martin, of the snapshots that I'm taking on the Friday as well. And what I've, and then I correlate that to the conversations that I have with the agents and agencies that I chat with over the weekend and on a Monday to see how they went, to give our followers and our viewers a heads up of what's happening on the ground on the day. And a lot of properties are getting past 10. And there's less sales occurring, and sales campaigns are dragging out. And you see the numbers there in terms of the listing. So, for example, on Friday we had 19,338. So basically, Friday evening is where you're going to have the maximum amount of numbers for sale on market on the domain in the Sydney region on the domain portal. And then if you go to today's numbers, as of 4:30 this afternoon, there's 19,130. So what that means is that a lot of properties weren't transacted over the weekend. A number of them will still be post negotiating after auctions, and they'll still be negotiating throughout the week. Not saying that they're not going to get sold, but the campaigns are starting to drag out beyond the day of auction. So we're moving into a time because of the higher amount of listings that are coming on. We're moving into a time where potentially, the better time to do the deal, if you're buying, is post auction, particularly if the sale fails on the day, because we've got vendors' expectations are very high. We've got inferior property that is demanding the prices of superior property that got sold 3, 4, 5 months ago, right? As you call them, the lemons. And that are trying to achieve the same price. So there's got to be a pulling back of those expectations in order to reach that, to make that deal. Now, I know our friends blame vendors and say that vendors are greedy. And I still wanted to have that invite from Larry from the AFR to talk to our mate from Ray White, because it's not so much the vendors, it's the wind that got blown up the backsides of the vendors by the selling agents that promised them big and bought the listing, and now they're coming unstuck.
Yeah, unfortunately, more are coming unstuck. I've had a couple of one-on-ones over the last week where people have actually got themselves in a real muddle with the agent pushing them in one direction, the market being in a different place, and then getting caught and trying to work out what to do. And I have to remind them, remember who the agent is working for. It's not necessarily you.
The loyalty is first and foremost to themselves. Unfortunately, they're not like lawyers, that the loyalty first and foremost is to the court. Yeah, the selling agent's loyalty is to the wallet in the back pocket.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's true. Now let's move on to Melbourne, because the Melbourne story is, somewhat parallel. So on the 2nd of September, 28,287 jumped forward, 27,207. So you can see there that things are still wobbling around, but actually there's a slight drop, which is interesting. And I wonder whether it's anything to do with the fact that the claim, according to 9 News in Melbourne, that Melbourne is the most affordable city to buy in, which is another way of saying that, prices have dropped, Edwin, prices have dropped.
Yeah, it's another way of saying help. We can't tread water for too much longer. Look, it's my take on this, Martin, is that Channel 9, 9 News Melbourne have just bought into one of the franchises from Albo and Co. Real Estate Partners. And so they need to spruik the market and get the look, and that's why they're sending Chalmers over to China. I'm telling you, look, there's very very soon we're going to hear of a new city going to be start to be developed, or the major development's going to come into Melbourne. I'm feeling it. I'm feeling it, mate.
Well, I would argue that maybe this has something to do with it too, because the Premier's major policy reversal as the state grapples with dwindling power. So Victorians can cook with gas for as long as they like after the state government excluded residential and commercial kitchen stovetops from its net zero roadmap. And they'll introduce laws appropriately. So there you go. Suddenly you can now cook with gas. Remember, one of the things that we argued earlier on, Edwin, was that one of the reasons why people were perhaps thinking of selling was because of this gas ban with relating to cooking. So they've sort of moved the dial slightly, which I think is quite ironic.
Yeah, but they won't pull back the other mandates. They won't pull them back. They won't pull back the glazing. They won't pull back the insulation. And heating. Look, but is it a bad thing that they won't pull it back? I mean, the bad thing is the taxes that they're imposing on investors. That's a bad thing. But in terms of minimum standards, I mean, a lot of these investors have put upon themselves for not keeping up with the maintenance of the properties, and
Yep.
But in that sense, I'm all for it. I'm all for the minimum standards. I wasn't for this gas thing. That was a bad thing because a lot of the new migrants that are coming in, and that have gone down to Melbourne. I mean, historically gas is the preferred method of cooking. So yeah, but look, in that sense, there's still a lot way. They've still got to walk back a lot more. In what they've got to walk back is the taxes. I mean, I didn't put it up there, but in the screenshot. But I mean, they're going to have a big fight on their hands with Airbnb tax. Is it constitutional or not? They're going to find out the hard way. But until then, there's a lot of other taxes that investors got to pay, and when investors get a bad taste in the mouth, it takes them a while to go back in. So you got to get fresh blood and you got to get new blood.
Yeah, well, I'm having again more conversations with property investors in Melbourne, and the conclusion because when I actually do the calculations in terms of actually what the property is doing in terms of cash flow, so not looking at the capital appreciation, because there's no capital appreciation there at the moment in Melbourne. People are horrified when they actually do the numbers. And of course, what I keep saying to people is you need to do the numbers to understand precisely what these changes are going to do to the income flow or lack of income flow for the properties. And one reason why some are coming on the market now. Quickly, let's look at Brisbane. Of course, Brisbane's in a completely different world. On the 2nd of September, 3689. On the 9th, 3787. So a small rise. Interesting again that we're seeing some pressures there in the Brisbane market still, although I highlight that earlier slide where more people are in financial difficulty, and I'm seeing more stress up in Brisbane as well. So that's another factor. Looking at the auctions, well, the auction numbers are ticking along, but I do think the point that you're making, Edwin, is really important about the fact that people might be going through the auction process, but then actually, for one reason or another, it stalls before they actually sell.
Yeah, this is the thing. I keep on saying the auction process is really to in the most part to benefit the agent. So, but outside of that, I put up a tweet there that on X, I put up a post there that in answer to Luke Christopher's funny story from a property over in Epping, but to drive the thought home, we've got more listings on market, we got more competition, we got more pressure on agents and also vendors, obviously. But what we're also going to get, Martin, is we're going to get a lot more underquoting. We're going to get a hell of a lot more underquoting, and for those that want to go to my Twitter feed, and look at the conversation that we're having there and what people have been saying along those lines based on the epping, without going into too much detail. It is interesting, and this is the scenario. And I highlight other parts of Sydney. I get similar stories to the one that Louis refers to. A house that was bought in 2016 for 3.1 million, and it got passed in at 2.9 million at the auction, where because the agent was guiding 2.6 or something. It was a shame.
Yeah, well,
we're going to see a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. We are. I was going to say exactly that. We're going to see a lot more of it because there's an air of desperation out there. Quickly, let's look at the rentals. So in Sydney on the 2nd, 12,110. Jump forward to the 9th, 11,910. Interesting little resonance there. In Melbourne on the 2nd of September, 10,621. And then on the 9th, 10,732. So a small rise. And, the interesting observation there about the rentals, and I've had this conversation through both ends of the spectrum. So those in the rental sector struggling to try and work out what to do with regards to whether they should buy or whether they shouldn't buy rather than rent. And when you do the math, it's a real big complication. And also some investors. I just want to put this up. This is the RBA story, and they're making the point there that advertised rents are running ahead of the CPI rents. That's, of course, because not all rents come up every month. It's only new rents that are actually advertised. And so there is still inflationary pressure there in the rentals. And that's what I'm finding with my conversations with people, is that those in the rental sector are still, even now, being confronted with significant rent rises. And those rent rises are not actually necessarily easing. So I'm afraid that for many people, those in the rental sector are getting squeezed the most. And in fact, in my stress results, which I'll discuss in more detail on Tuesday in my live show, it's the rental sector that really is feeling it at the moment, unfortunately. So that's the story with the rents. And I guess, Edwin, as we come to the end of the show, of course, there's always time for your tip of the week. And this is a biggie, actually. This is a real biggie.
Yeah, look, I was chatting with some more fellows this morning, and they were talking about what I was sharing with some of the insurance companies, and what they're doing in terms. Because I meet with some investigators from insurance companies, and this is the interesting thing, Martin. There's what we're saying. We've got to say to our followers and our viewers is stay alert and be vigilant, right? Because there are more and more staged pranks or car crashes. There are car crashes being staged more around Sydney, where and a lot of people are getting caught up, and it's usually a lot of it is from high-priced vehicles, and if you get caught up in one of them, it'd be very unfortunate. And the insurance companies are making it very, very difficult to make claims when it's a legitimate prank. They're employing a lot more investigators to investigate the scenarios. We're talking about vehicles, upwards of $250,000, and a lot of them are owned by students that for one reason or another they've got fed up with the car and they just go out there and they want to smash it from the WeChat chatterers. This is interesting, but outside of that, we're also talking about there are businesses and companies that are also staging fires and other mishaps. So and that was I won't mention the suburb of where that is. This has just happened recently in Sydney, in Sydney West, and there's a big investigation around happening around that fire, and we're talking millions of dollars there, but I guess the extension of my tip is if you have a business or a company or an individual that owes you money, find ways to mitigate their recovery and mitigate their recovery and try and recover it ASAP before you lose it all. Because as you mentioned earlier on in the podcast, as you mentioned earlier on in the show, Martin, the bankruptcy, small business SME bankruptcy rates are going through the roof. And so if you're a supplier to a small business, if you're a subcontractor from a small business, and you're on this ridiculous 30-day, 90-day, 120-day accounts that they hold you to, try to do something to change that, because it's going to get, potentially it'll get a lot costlier. Sometimes recovering, getting 50% now is better than trying to get 100% over the next 6 to 12 months, 18 months, 2 years, because it may not be there.
Yeah, very good advice, Edwin. Yes, I'm afraid the default rates and the insolvency rates among companies are actually rising, and particularly on the small end of the market. And it's not just in the construction sector. Other point I'd make is that all of these insurance claims that are going through helps to explain why we're seeing the cost of insurance going through the roof as well. And of course, that insurance rise feeds into the CPI. So it's, in fact, the insurance premium rises over the last 12 months was one of the big driving factors of lifting inflation. So it's all sort of going around in a big circle here. So in other words, the issues of, insurance false claims and those sorts of things flowing into the process too. So unfortunately, it's not a good story. Edwin, very important conversation this week, as always. Thank you very much for your time. And it feels like only yesterday we're talking, but it's been a whole week. So I guess we'll do it tomorrow afternoon and next week.
Looking forward to it, Martin. Looking forward to it. You look after yourself.
Cheers. Take care. Bye-bye. Thank you, sir.